All right. What's going on, people? It is Community Beacon. It is Friday, August 7th, 2026. And just like that, the summer has come to a close. Next week, the kids will be back in school, August 10th. So we Monday,
It's
right? So
Monday.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So as we get started, before we even get started, I want to wish everyone a happy and safe school year. I have one going that's about to be a junior. So that's exciting. Yeah. And then I have one that's supposed to be entering kindergarten. We'll see how that goes. Well, it's a nail biter. Yeah. And yeah, brother, man, good to see you, man. Good. We missed last week. I saw you pop up briefly on the thing. I was like, is that him? And I went to clicking on it, but of course, I know you were busy. So we had something prepared in the form of communication. So, man, we've been doing this journey for so long. It's right around 6 years now. And
Love
so
that.
we Come on, brother. And we've been documenting this journey with this community beacon. We have one thing about us is that we have rarely missed. So over 6 years, let's count it 52 Fridays. Let's say maybe we missed three a year. And I think that's a handful. It might have been 4 a year or something, but other than that, let's just 45 shows a year. So 45 shows a year over 6 years. We got like almost 400 videos. Is that 400? Am I doing the math right? I think I'm a little off. A little under 400 videos, like 300 something videos. So man, I was able to go back last week, look at us engage and talk, see how far we've come, the conversations that we've had. And so, man, it was interesting to say the least. And of course, your presence was missed last week as well.
I appreciate it, bro. I do. I definitely appreciate it coming out of that class and just kind of bridging that gap from the class to the car to being on site and the phone calls that started coming in. Things just started kind of getting like, I was like, what is going on here? What is happening? What is happening? So, and what my life is producing right now. So it was just like one of them things. I'm like, all right, man, God bless. Let's just keep moving.
Let's just go. Life gets that way sometimes. I would even I know probably most people on the internet wouldn't call it that. But when you're experiencing it and you're aware that you're experiencing it, it almost feels like flow. Like this is just happening. This is just happening. This phone call is coming in. This person is walking in. Man, I have something to do tomorrow that's out of so a lot of these things are breaking the pattern, but when you allow yourself to actually be in it is the flow. And that's whether or not some of these things we possibly don't even want to do, right? Like some of these conversations are difficult. Sometimes we want to put them off as far as we can, or whatever our coping strategies are for our nervous system to help out. But man, when you're in it, you're just like, okay, here I am and I'm moving forward, right?
I think that's great. I think that's great. Considering that you started us off last week talking about communication. I think that's like super. First off, shout out to my brother right there. He is Palm Beach Mike.
Am I?
He is in the city right now, in the county, and he goes beyond the county. And I'm Joel Simmons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shouts out.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah. But diving into that communication on last week, and I'm interested in hearing more about it. I have not gone back into the video to rewatch it just yet. So maybe I'll put that I'll roll it while I'm rolling down the street so I can at least listen. But I think that what you're talking about is super, super important, just like diving into communication and being awareness. Because being aware inside of a conversation I think it means so much when it comes down to communicating, right? If you're going to have a conversation, it's really important. I believe that construct your thoughts, you deliver your message, you allow space to receive. Like there's just so many different things, because communication is so heavy. And when people are not aware, when they are completely unaware, it's obviously is very easy. You can just do a simple Q&A question. Hey, what was the last thing that I said? And it's funny, or what was the first thing that I said? It's funny how there are those people that are just like the goat. They're just like the goat. They're like, they ain't paying no attention, or at least it looks like it. You absolutely believe 1000%, like, you ain't paying no attention to me. And they turn around and be like, you just said you ain't paying no attention to me. And I mean, and they go line for line. And you're like, okay, not you, somebody else. I think that's important, man. I think just starting right there with awareness is like crazy important. And I mean, I'd love to know what other people are thinking about communication. I know we're not even touching the tip of the iceberg right now, but it's just like right there. Are we aware inside of the conversation? I know that my attention span for the conversations that I hold is like high level, but I also know that there are some times when I just turn it off. And there's been some times when I didn't even realize I turned it off. And I think that those are signals. Those are signals. Disengagement is a signal.
Go deeper into that. What do you mean by that?
So, like, just in this thought process, right, of this exploration of this thought that I'm giving, that I'm making now verbal, right? It's like disengagement equates to something. It means something, right? So what is it? Are you just distracted? That could be it. It could be something as simple as distraction. It could be something on your mind. Hey, I left the stove on. Did I leave the iron on? You know, the famous lined response of Home Alone, Kevin, right? It's like, oh, I feel like we left something on, and they're communicating. Was it this? Was it that? They're like, oh, that's what it is. And then the mom shouts out, Kevin. It's like because of the distractions, right? There was a lot of distractions. And though people were having multiple conversations in that entire scene, lots of conversations, the distraction was still there. I need to get to the airport. I need to make sure there's a proper head count, how many kids are there, and the chaos in the room allowed a neighbor to be counted as a child
You remember? You sound
without
like you watched.
verification.
Sound like you watched it yesterday.
It's a favorite in my household, all right?
Okay.
So yeah, Home Alone been seen many times. Yeah, right?
That was Paul's movie too during December. That's why I remember what you're saying. Why you're calling it is that it's automatically recalled because he was watching it. I think we watched it 1,000 times. But yeah, go ahead, brother. I just noticed it was fresh in your mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and so I think that that's the thing, though, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, if it's distraction, it's distraction, If it's importance, it's important, right? Priority levels. People have priorities. We don't want to always believe that we are not the priority when we're speaking with someone else. But I think that it's very important that we become more aware and utilize our discerning tactics. If we're not the priority, then they are distracted because they are thinking about what is the priority. And that may be just getting out of the conversation with the person they're speaking with. Legit. Sometimes you go into a networking event and you're avoiding this thing. And so that distraction's coming up, you know? And then there could be some other things. It could be pain inside somebody's body, distraction, right? Could be noise, construction all around, right? Loud music, facial cues, smells. All of these things can be distractions. And so I just think that these are like signals that your message is not going through the appropriate channel to be received, right? A person could be distracted by their past or their future and the thought of it, recollection, when somebody says something, right? Like we just had it just right now. Great example. You said that was Paul's movie. We've been watching it. And so the example I gave triggered a memory, a thought, and that thought can easily take a person out of the conversation. Now, your thought may have taken you out, but it looped back in, right? Like the infinity loop. But sometimes they can take somebody out and they can stay out there. They can be gone. And sometimes those triggers could be triggers to something that is painful. It doesn't always have to be something that is pleasant like it was this time. This time it was pleasant, man. We had a chuckle, we laughed, it was fun, made comments. We brought the conversation back. There was no derailment. Sometimes it could be painful, and the pain could trigger an emotion, a response. And that response could stop communication. So I think that's what I mean by it's a signal. It's a signal that something is going on with the person or people that you're communicating with. I'm not saying that you have to explore it. If it's one-on-one, it may behoove you to, especially if that conversation means something to you. It may not behoove you to. That conversation doesn't mean anything to you. Or if you just want to say your piece and you're not really communicating, there's no back and forth, or you're not really conversing. You're just communicating something. You just want to give the message, and it's up to them to deal with it. So I think that also is a varying level. We put too much on the table, brother. Come on and talk with me.
It's interesting. You started off, you were talking about the ability to like receive within the conversation and allowing it, and that resonated. That was something that we spoke about during that video, and and I stopped it at that part as well and spoke about just receiving. So when you did it, I had a big smile on my face, like, yeah, we such a you're such a masterful communicator with the understanding. And a lot of the stuff that you speak on I mean, for most what I found, typically, the majority of people that we come across they already have this story going on in their mind, may have practiced what they were going to say before they even got into conversation with you. And I've done it. So I'm not pretending as if I'm not I wasn't one of these people at certain points in time. But then there's that part where you say the awareness of something, of when a disconnect happens, right? Like, and because in the Home Alone conversation where we kind of went off and we come back because, we digress. And then you had something painful. It brings up something painful, right? And people minds tend to wander off. When you're taught in PR and even in real estate and sales, like, don't talk about hot button topics. Like, don't feed into it. So hot button topics would probably be politics, religion, relationships, etc. Like, these are hot button topics because most people have some kind of charge to it. And then I started finding out that people almost have a charge to almost anything. So if you think yeah.
Reality, yes.
So if you believe that you're going to skate around these different issues, it's not gonna happen. The brother was talking about Home Alone, and it automatically put me in the mode of me around my youngest son. A moment that was just, like, really close to me about us watching Home Alone together for the first time. So no matter what you do, so the ability to attempt like certain things, like, okay, yeah, absolutely not. And you can too. A real quick, tactical, and tangible tip for a person to do is to call it out. Call it out. Hey, I think we've lost connection. And I think you and I have done that several times on the show. Where it's like a connection has been lost here. Let's go back to it. What was it about, or whatever it is. Like, I lost connection. So if you can simply call something out when you notice it, like, I lost connection. Sometimes when I go on talking over and over, for long periods of time, and it could be a lot of information, especially if I'm talking numbers or there's something that I'm very passionate about, people can kind of start to, wander. Their mind wanders off. It's a lot of information. Information can make your brain tired. So you can call it out, like, hey, listen, I think there's enough for today. Like, we've probably reached your capacity, not the capability. I love to separate people's capability from their capacity, because you're capable of anything. But at some point in time, you can say, man, at this point and moment, my capacity for this conversation, it's just not there. So if I can just point that out during a crucial conversation, or during a conversation, if I can point out the disconnect. Another really quick, awesome tip that I found for yourself. So it's not just about, and I'm not here to caretake anyone else. We're pointing these things out. I don't want to guess or assume. I've done an experiment where you spoke on something and you just looked at the other person's face, right? And you are, and you were just speaking on it. You were speaking on it. You were speaking on it, and then you would have to say what you thought the other person was thinking. And almost 90% of the time, like, you don't know what they were thinking about. Once again, you're jumping in on somebody's mind, their whatever they experienced during that day, the weather, whether they had an argument. It probably was. It could have been, the dog got. Their minds could be someplace else. So while you're talking about something that you could be passionate about, or maybe it's just regular conversation, this person is thinking something totally different. So be careful about making the assumption on what another person has going on, or better yet, ask them. Hey, I noticed that you made a face. It seemed like that didn't really, sync well with you. It didn't align with you. Something was off there. And give them the permission, allow them the permission to say, no, I was just thinking about something else. What were you saying again? Right? But this just brings us back to this point of awareness. And ultimately, all of this is like just checking the connection during conversation, right? Like, what is the connection? Are we connected in this conversation, or is it disconnect? Hey, we love to say there's no emergencies in real estate, right? Like, if there's an emergency, like, call 911. The house is on fire, something is going on. There's like really no emergency because you have ample time to prepare for things. Most conversations don't necessarily have to happen in that exact moment. You can always say, do I have the capacity for this? Don't gauge them as we go through this conversation. Okay, this is might have been the third time that it seems like your mind has wandered. Maybe this is not the time to have this conversation. Another trick, and I'll leave it at this, not trick, a tactic, something foundational you can use that I love is I like to table like crucial conversations or conversations with different people on different days. Like, there's certain days that I'm just like, okay, this is the day for these people. I like Joe Hudson spoke about having 3 hours a month for like a super crucial conversation, something that you want to put off forever and ever and ever and ever. It's like, okay, does this fit into the 3 hours I have? Put it down. And in that instance, you can really have an agenda, right? Like, you can go into it with agenda and give the person so that they know what to expect with the conversation. Hey, this is kind of what we want to get out of this conversation before hopefully we can get this done in the next, whatever. And give them time to brace themselves if they need to be. Chris Voss talks about that as well. Like, give people time to kind of to understand what they're getting into, the expectations of what's happening. And that may help. But once again, this is just like, for the most of us, just becoming aware in a conversation is like this is probably the simplest first step. Like, hey, I think I wandered off in this conversation, and then saying it, right? Just that first step, I think, is super impactful. Could be super impactful.
I like that. And there was a lot of C words: communication, conversation, connection, capability, capacity.
See,
Like, wow. I like that idea. And I think that it's important that we understand the difference between those words. I do think communication and conversation are not the same. You know, communication is more of a give and take where people are connected or not connected with the same thought process, but they are in the same conversation. Whether they agree or disagree is not what I'm referring to. What I mean is they're talking with each other. Yeah. A conversation, a conversation could be, I think I said it backwards. A conversation is when they are talking with each other. Communication, it can be when you're talking at somebody or with somebody. It could be either or, because communication can be like, hey, son, go tell your sister that dinner's ready. And he goes upstairs and he says, hey, dinner's ready. And then walks back downstairs. What'd she say? I don't know. Well, does she know? I don't know. And then 5 seconds later, she comes downstairs. It was communicated. Maybe it wasn't the way I wanted it to look, but it was communicated. A communication sometimes is like a form, a sheet of paper, and it is an advertisement. It is a communication, right? But a conversation is when people are conversing, going backwards and forwards about a topic. So I had it backwards. Connection, I like that you brought up connection because I think connection means a whole lot. Connection is not the same thing as a conversation. Just because two people are talking about a specific subject doesn't mean that they are actually connected on it, right? I'm not saying that you have to agree on it, but a connection means that we are both invested in where we are going with whatever it is that we're conversing about. And so that's a difference. There's a difference between the two of those. So it's like, I feel like there's deeper levels, right? And this is like a more intrinsic, a deeper, a more rooted type of level. It's like, I'm not just having this conversation with you, but I want to communicate with you. And I like it if you would like to communicate with me also. If we're able to get in that space where we are both communicating, then I feel like whatever it is, we're able to come up with a solution. There is some type of solution there. There's always a solution. I believe there is always a solution. I don't think that there is anything without a solution, because the solution could be at its worst, could be like, you know what, leave it the way it is. So I just don't feel like there is never a solution to anything. There's always a solution. But then you dove into like capabilities, and you said capability versus capacity, which I feel like we may have discussed this before. I'm sure it's popped up, but it's like, you introduced it in this way of this kind of like comparison and contrasting. And I think that was just like so very relevant, not just in this conversation, but with the topic of awareness. Capability is the ability to carry something, right? Like, I am capable of moving the chair that I'm sitting in. Right? I'm capable of doing it. As a matter of fact, there's 10 chairs in here. I am capable of moving all 10 of those chairs. However, my capacity is moving 2 of them at one time, right? Or my capacity is moving 3 of them at one time. Now, I'm capable of moving all 10, but if I got to move them all at one time, if I got to take them all down the steps, my capacity is limited. But my capability is there. I can do it. I'll take 10, take one chair every single time, and I'll do it 10 times, right? My capacity is limited, right? And so I just think like all of those things are super, super important that you just mentioned, because we're talking about a conversation. And I think that these details matter, right? Just like when I finished speaking just a moment ago, I could feel that this was a conversation and that we were connected, because you were able to pull things from what I communicated from all over my communication. Like, you pulled it from the front, you pulled it from the middle, you pulled it from the end, and then you had something to deliver, something to also give. And so that is a connection in a conversation via communication, right? I just think that is just super powerful. So when we start to dive into, these different types of relationships, whether it's one to many or one to one, it's like, these are all things that we should be thinking about. And if this is a particular type of relationship where we are attempting to communicate with somebody who moves us or who touches us or who is a part of our heart, part of our soul, part of our spirit, part of our being, right? They mean something to us, then connection, I think, should be priority. So I love that you mentioned this method of Joe Hudson about the 3 hours. I think that that's rich, right? I think that that's wealthy. I think that that's worth its weight in gold. I think that that's wise, right? I'm not saying that I don't think that there's other tactics. I love the fact that you just gave out like 4 tactics. Don't quote me on the number. But I just love that you just gave all these different tactics. I thought that was rich. That was really worth the while. I feel like this conversation is, because if a person is to take this conversation and they were to take this and they were to dissect it and say, how can I use this information in insert your own narrative? I think it would be beneficial. I think it would be very beneficial. And so that's what I love about it. I like this Joe Hudson tactic, quite frankly. You know, I had not thought about that. So I think that that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the 3 hours that Joe referenced. It's not because we can't have those conversations, just like the example you gave with the chair, right? It's just that you are also showing yourself some type of compassion to say, "Okay, I can have these." Because I think a lot of us can sit there and listen all day long to and have difficult conversations and have the words for them, but it's like, are we showing ourselves some compassion for it? I also understand that as we start to become deeper into our thought process surrounding these different conversations, we become better listeners, we become better communicators, or the ability to have these deeper conversations. It can be a lot because oftentimes the person in front of you is not at that level. So it goes, I'm looking at, I just wrote down to whom much is given. Yeah. So now you're going into a conversation with all of this, the foundational information of what is going is of connect, especially connecting. And I don't necessarily think that a connection has to be between two people. A person doesn't have to be in connection with me for me to be in connection with them. I'm sorry. I know you want to cut me off and you want to go numb and you want to hate me and you don't want to have this conversation or nothing, but I can still be in connection with you. What that doesn't mean is that I'm going to come and attempt to dominate you and tell you what it is to do and how to do it or what time to do it or at that moment, right? There's different levels of communication in my mind. I used to tend to lean towards domination. I have this authority, I have this understanding. I should be able to tell you something. And that's not necessarily the case. If I ever wanted to be reciprocal, or if I not even just reciprocal, if I just want to sit well with myself, if I just want to be well within myself, I have to understand that there's a connection, there's possible alignment, there's possible misalignment. I don't know how many times I've just talked past someone or we've been talking past each other. We want the same thing, have similar values, love, connection. We want these things, but because of where we're at, we're talking past each other. So I have to give empathy and compassion for that and saying, okay, well, this person, most capable person I may know or whatever, they just don't have the capacity at this time to take in this information or even to connect. And that's fine. This doesn't mean that I'm going to allow you to abuse me. This doesn't mean that I'm going to allow you to get angry at me. This is not going to mean that I'm going to allow you to treat me any kind of way that's not civil, right? That doesn't mean I'm going to take, quote unquote, take it. There will be boundaries in place up until and when we both have the capacity to be in connection and have the conversation. If not, I still love you. I'm still open to you. We don't agree at this spot. We may have to go in a separate way, or we may have to put boundaries in place so that we all are both being civil. I'm going to be loving with another person. However, that's just the way it is. So that thought process of the capacity and the capability just really blew my mind. I also started to say that even if they are capable, but they don't have the capacity, it doesn't. Honestly, it doesn't even matter. There's no conversation to be had, right? Times when you've worked and you're super tired, and normally, like, this would be, I'm the person that you would or I've worked and I'm super tired, and I would normally be the person that you would come to and have a conversation with and would be able to really converse and connect. But, I haven't had my Snicker for the day, right? That I'm hungry. I need to take a nap. Like, I need to table it. I have all the capability in the world, but if that capacity isn't there, if I'm overwhelmed, if I'm not aligned or attuned, one of my principles is to check my temperature. When I check if my nervous system is not there, right? I didn't, whatever it is that I need to move the energies is not there. That conversation is probably not going to be the same conversation we would have at a later time and date. So once again, this is not permission because we have this information, because we have this understanding, because we have this knowing to take abuse or to just have the conversation because we believe we can. Check yourself. And then also, but what it is for you to be able to notice or be aware with the person that you're in connection with or having a conversation or even communication with to say, this is not it. We spoke about last week. It was interesting because you brought it up earlier in the conversation, or maybe it was before we got on. You were talking about like silence and how important that is, like the ability to give the conversation breathing room for it could be for things to land, but mostly for to get a clear understanding, tactical empathy, understanding where that person is coming from, really learning, figuring out what the capacity this person has to contribute or even to have the conversation. And I last week I quoted numbers. I was like, I started noticing that in sales, I need to really be quiet about I need to speak about 20% of the time. And 80% of the time I should be listening. And the 20%, maybe 10% of that time is really asking questions. If you ask the right questions or if you ask, I wouldn't even say, I don't even want to call it right because I don't want to say you can ask a wrong question. When you ask a question and it's really an open-ended question because you're really curious about what the answer is, that person's going to do the majority of the talking, and that person's going to believe that you understand and resonate with them, and really you're trying to get to an understanding. Because before you can actually, I don't want to say before you can care, because you can care before an understanding, but when you deep a person I feel who deeply cares really ask these questions to get these understandings of where this other person is standing and what's not being said. Oftentimes people there's things that are not being said in any conversation, sales or otherwise, that are not being said because this person doesn't necessarily probably doesn't know how to communicate it. So for you to be in this view conversations we have, for you to be in wonder of what may happen. I don't have We do have agendas. It's another super dope tactic to do is to name your agenda. You don't have to tell them in your mind, right? So I'm in a sales conversation. My agenda, maybe there's an agenda. Oh man, I'd like to have a transaction, right? I'd like to have a sale. That's an agenda. That's if you're in sales and you're telling me that that's not an agenda in your mind, I don't think you're in sales. Like that's especially if that's what you do to make money to feed your family. You're saying, okay, one of the things is that I want to sell. Own that, right? That's happening in your mind, even if you want to push it down. Sometimes in a relationship, is like, I really want this person to understand me or just listen or go in this direction. That could be in a relationship. Then you name a second agenda. So for sales, it could be like, man, I really want to lead this person. Like this person doesn't know what they're doing, and I really want to tell them what it is that they wanted, what needs to happen. Like I want to be right. And that's essentially what that is. I want to be right in this conversation or be seen as right in this conversation. Relationship, it could be the same thing. I really want to tell this person, like, we're missing this point. I want to be right about this. Right. I'm right. So once you own those things, because those are things that are just already in our thought process, then you ask a question. And this question, that question could come totally out of left field, right? In a sales conversation, it could be like, so what's going on with your family? And really be into that question. I didn't ask a question about, selling this house or them being a buyer. I didn't ask them a question about I need to lead you into the right way. The question that actually comes out after I owned my agenda could be something totally different. It could be something simple as like, how are you doing? How are you doing? What's going on? Like all these other questions can happen once I own my agenda. These questions can happen anyways, but if you own your agenda, I just find it to be cleaner and the connection to be there.
When I was working with the Seminoles, I got a chance to go up to, what was that? What is that near Tampa? It's called Lake something. I'm not
Lakeland.
remember. Lakeland. Thank you. I went up to Lakeland, and while I was in Lakeland, I got a chance to go to, a special program for the tribal members, and I was accepted among the elders. And of course, it had been communicated to me via a training session on customs. And so, I kept that communication in my head and in my mind for years and years, and I still got it, obviously. But the day came when I was there and the elders had accepted me to be with them in a specific location. And it was away from everybody else. And so it was just like few of these older men that were there. And, they were doing something. And I observed them. And brother, like the way that you and I are communicating right now, the way that our conversation is flowing, this is the way that the the elder the elders would speak, even longer pauses, right? Like and they didn't look at each other. You don't like lock eyes because, it's about hearing and listening to the conversation. And I would watch them and they would sit right next to each other and everybody looking forward. And they would have these conversations. And when one man stopped speaking, it's like you could hear a dime drop. And then the next person will speak. And I observed that and it was beautiful. Nobody ever walked over the other person in the conversation. Nobody rushed their answer. Like they were just so well in tune, so well connected. Beautiful. I enjoyed that. I like another thing that you had mentioned. You said we can listen all day. And I thought that that was interesting. That's when I thought of, let me just, I feel like pushing into that. I don't even need to. Brother, they just listened, man. They were just like there. Like in our culture of the American citizens, we push. You said like own that you want to be right. Like, yo, let's own this. Us, we, the collective Americans. Let's own it, right? The collective, the majority, whoever that is. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's not the people that's listening, but the collective, right? The collective. Because in American culture, there is a lot of, I'm ready to speak. I've already got the answer. I already know. Very similar to the way that we drive. Have you ever attempted to get out of a CVS or Publix and the light is right there? It's like right there. It's like I could throw a rock and hit the light if my arm was good, and I actually wanted to hit that light. Pow! I'd hit the light because it's right there and it's red. And yet every single car is racing to the red light. And you have to wait for the minority of the cars that are approaching for one of them to slow down so that you may be allowed to come into the flow of traffic. Feel like sometimes that's what a conversation is like. Everybody is rushing to their point, to their red light, only to stop and wait because they can't go any further. For that cause, the ones that we are communicating with are left behind, still trying to enter into the flow.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. I want to be respectful of your time. You let me know if
Yeah. Thank you.
guys, awesome, awesome conversation. If you have any thoughts, comments, etc., surrounding, remember Community Beacon TV. This will be up tomorrow at some point in time. I'll endeavor to have that happen. If not, for the most part, put them up, put the stuff in there, man. Love to hear what you have to say about communication, your thoughts surrounding this episode, and we'll catch you next week, man. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Peace, people.